The court of Veyrhall gathered to watch a cursed girl dance at another woman's bonding feast. By the final note, the dead true mate would appear behind her and point to the bride. They called it entertainment. That made the cruelty easier to swallow. Music softened things, candles softened things, wine softened things. A silk-draped hall filled with nobles could turn almost any humiliation into ceremony if the servants moved quietly enough and no one important bled. Nara Vire stood barefoot behind the eastern curtain, with silver bells tied around her ankles and a black veil over her face. The bells were not decoration. They were warning. Everyone in Veyrhall knew the superstition. When the cursed girl danced, someone died before dawn. No one asked whether those deaths had other causes. No one asked why Nara was always forced to dance for people who already had enemies. It was easier to blame the girl with silent feet and haunted eyes. Tonight they had dressed her in ash-gray silk, thin as smoke and cut low enough to make her shame part of the performance. Around her wrists they tied black ribbons dipped in moonwater. Around her throat they fastened a little iron charm shaped like a wolf skull, the kind used to keep bad spirits from entering royal rooms. As if she were the spirit. As if she were the thing that needed containing. Nara kept her hands still at her sides. She had learned long ago that trembling pleased people. The more afraid she looked, the safer they felt. A servant girl beside her whispered, "I am sorry." Nara did not answer. Apology was kind. It was also useless. Beyond the curtain, the bonding feast glittered beneath hundreds of winter candles. The great hall of Veyrhall was built from pale stone and black oak, with wolf banners hanging between tall windows where moonlight spilled across the floor. At the far end of the hall, beneath the carved antlers of the first royal beast, sat Wolf Prince Darius Veyr. Nara had only seen him twice before. Once from a corridor, passing like a storm in black ceremonial armor. Once through a kitchen doorway, standing alone beneath the rain, staring at the statue of his dead mate as if hatred were the only thing keeping him upright. Tonight he wore a black bonding cloak, clasped with silver at his throat. He was young enough to be handsome, and old enough to look ruined by duty. Dark hair, sharp face, pale blue-gray eyes, a mouth that seemed to have forgotten softness. Beside him sat Lady Selene Morcant, his bride-to-be, dressed in white wolf silk, with a bridal crown of moonstones woven through her pale golden hair. She looked perfect. That was the first thing Nara noticed. Not beautiful, though she was that too. Perfect, polished, deliberate. Every tilt of her chin, every lowered glance, every soft touch against the prince's sleeve had been crafted to show the court exactly what it wanted. A noble bride, gentle enough to heal a grieving prince, and powerful enough to secure the Western alliance. But Prince Darius did not look healed. He looked trapped. 3 years earlier, his true mate, Lissa Thorne, had died before their public bonding. The court said she had been killed by border wolves. The court said Darius found her body in the moon chapel and never spoke her name again. The court said his wolf had gone silent from grief. The court said many things. Nara had learned that courts did not lie by accident. A hand gripped her shoulder. She turned. Lady Selene stood behind the curtain, smiling. Close, she smelled of white roses and cold metal. "Nara," Selene said softly, as if speaking to a frightened pet. "You understand why you were chosen tonight?" "Yes." Nara lowered her gaze. "To dance, my lady." Selene's smile sharpened. "To remind the court that old grief does not frighten us anymore." Nara's stomach tightened. Selene reached out and adjusted the black veil over Nara's face. "The prince loved a dead girl once. Tonight he bonds to a living woman. Dance beautifully. Do not stumble, do not weep, and if the curse follows you," she leaned closer, "try to make it useful." Then she returned to the hall, white silk sweeping behind her. The master of music raised his bow. The hall quieted. Nara heard her name spoken like a stain. The cursed dancer, the death girl. Why would Lady Selene allow this? Because she is brave. Because the prince must show he no longer fears ghosts. Ghosts. The word touched something cold beneath Nara's ribs. For as long as she could remember, the dead had moved near her when music played. Not clearly, not fully. A shadow at the edge of candlelight. A whisper under the strings. A hand reaching through moonlit smoke before vanishing when the song ended. Nara had never told anyone. People already called her cursed. She did not need to give them proof. The curtain opened. Light struck her face. The bells on her ankles gave one small sound. Every conversation in the hall died. Nara stepped onto the bonding floor. Nobles lined the edges of the room with cups in their hands and cruelty hidden behind ceremony. Servants stood by the pillars, eyes lowered. Musicians waited on the western dais. At the head table, Lady Selene sat beside Prince Darius with a calm smile. Darius looked at Nara once, only once, then looked away, as if the sight of humiliation dressed as entertainment disgusted him, but not enough to stop it. That should not have hurt. It did. Nara moved to the center of the hall. The music began, a low, mournful violin, a drumbeat like a distant heart. Nara lifted her arms. The black ribbons at her wrist trailed like smoke. She danced because refusal meant punishment, and punishment always found servants in rooms without witnesses. She danced because her body had been trained to make pain beautiful. She danced because the court wanted to watch a cursed girl become graceful enough to laugh at. At first, nothing happened. The nobles relaxed. Someone chuckled. Selene's smile widened. Then the candles turned blue. Every flame in the hall bent toward Nara. The violin faltered. Nara kept moving because stopping felt more dangerous than dance. Cold gathered behind her. Not the cold of winter air through stone windows. The cold of a grave opening its eyes. The bells around her ankles rang without movement. One by one, the wolves carved into the hall pillars lowered their stone heads. A murmur spread through the court. Nara turned in the final arc of the dance, and the black veil slipped from her face. Behind her stood a woman made of moonlight. The ghost was young, pale, and beautiful, in a way sorrow had not erased. Dark hair floated around her shoulders as if underwater. A silver wound glowed over her heart. Her eyes, bright with unfinished truth, were fixed not on Nara, but on the head table. Prince Darius rose so violently his chair struck the floor. Lusa. The name broke from him like blood. The ghost lifted one hand. The entire court stopped breathing. Lady Selene went white. Lyssa Thorne, dead mate of the Wolf Prince, pointed directly at the bride. Then the ghost spoke through the music. She wears my murderer's crown. Nara stumbled backward. Darius's wolf shadow exploded behind him, huge, black, and furious, waking for the first time in 3 years. The bonding feast became a trial, and every door in the hall slammed shut. Every door in the bonding hall slammed shut. The sound struck like a judgment. Nobles screamed. Silver cups fell. Musicians scrambled backward from their instruments as if the violin strings had become snakes. The hundreds of winter candles burned blue, their flames bending toward the ghost, standing behind Nara in the center of the hall. Lyssa Thorne had been dead for 3 years. Yet there she stood, made of moonlight and unfinished rage, with one spectral hand pointed at Lady Selene Morcant. She wears my murderer's crown. The words did not fade. They remained in the air like frost. Nara stood frozen in front of the ghost, the bells on her ankles trembling, though her feet no longer moved. She could feel Lyssa behind her without turning cold, sorrowful, and fierce. The dead woman's presence pressed against Nara's back like a second shadow. At the head table, Wolf Prince Darius Veyr stood motionless. His wolf shadow towered behind him now, enormous and black, far larger than any ordinary royal beast. For 3 years, the court had whispered that his wolf had gone silent from grief. Now it rose with silver fire in its eyes, jaws open, every line of its body shaking with a rage too long starved. Darius's gaze was locked on Lyssa, not Selene, not the court. Lyssa. His voice came rough. How? The ghost did not lower her hand. Nara felt the answer before Lyssa spoke. Not in words exactly, in the cold shiver of a secret pushing through music. Ask the bride. The entire hall turned toward Selene. For a heartbeat, Lady Selene looked like the innocent bride everyone had been trained to see: white silk, moonstone crown, pale hands clasped at her throat, blue eyes bright with wounded disbelief. Then she recovered. Her tears came instantly. Beautifully. My prince, Selene whispered. This is not Lyssa. This is grave magic. The cursed girl has called a false spirit to destroy the bonding. The court shifted. Nara felt it at once. Fear loved a simple story. A cursed girl, a ghost, a ruined feast. Much easier to blame the dancer than the bride. Nara backed away one step. I did not call her. Selene turned that frightened sentence into a weapon. Then why does she stand behind you? Nara had no answer. Because she did not know. Because the dead had always moved near her when music played, but never like this, never whole, never speaking, never turning a royal bonding feast into a murder trial. Darius descended the steps from the head table. The nobles parted for him immediately. His black bonding cloak trailed behind him like a storm shadow. His wolf moved with him, not separate, not fully attached, but close enough that the air warped around both of them. Nara's instinct told her to lower her eyes. She did not. Darius stopped before her. Not close enough to touch. Close enough for her to see the grief he had trained into stone. "What are you?" he asked. Not cruelly. Not gently either. Nara's throat tightened. "I am no one important, Your Highness." His wolf shadow growled. Not at her. At the answer, Darius looked down at the bells on her ankles, the black ribbons on her wrists, the iron wolf skull charm at her throat. Then his eyes moved to the nobles who had laughed when she entered. Who dressed her like this? No one answered. Selene stepped forward. "It is only court tradition. The dancer is known to carry ill fortune. I thought if she performed tonight and nothing happened, the court might stop fearing old superstitions." Lissa's ghost laughed. It was not a living sound. It was winter breaking over a grave. "You dressed a witness as a curse and called it mercy." Selene's face hardened for half a breath. Darius saw it. So did Nara. The wolf shadow lowered its head toward the floor, sniffing the blue candle smoke. Then it turned sharply toward the bridal crown resting on Selene's pale hair. Its lips curled. Darius followed its gaze. "Remove the crown," he said. Selene's hand flew to the moonstones. "No." The answer came too fast. The hall heard it. Darius's voice dropped. "Remove it. My prince, this crown was blessed for our bonding. If I take it off before the final vow, the Western houses will see it as an insult. If you refuse, I will see it as confession." Selene stared at him. For the first time, her tears stopped. Nara felt Lissa move behind her. The ghost's hand lowered from pointing at Selene and reached instead toward the musician's dais. "The song," Lissa whispered. Nara turned slightly. "What?" "The song that killed me." The old master of music went white. Darius's attention snapped to him. "Play it." The musician shook his head. "Your Highness, play it." The man lifted his bow with shaking fingers. Selene took one step back. "Darius, please." The use of his name did not soften him. The first note scraped across the hall. The candles flared blue-white. Nara's body moved before she chose it. Her right foot slid back, her arms lifted. The black ribbons curled in the air. The dance began again, but it was not the same dance they had forced her to perform for laughter. This one hurt. Every step felt like walking through someone else's final breath. Lissa's ghost moved behind her, matching each movement with impossible grace. Where Nara turned, Lissa turned. Where Nara lifted her hand, Lissa's spectral hand rose through hers. The court watched the cursed girl and the murdered mate dance as one body living flesh and dead moonlight, shame, and witness braided together by music. Then the floor remembered. Silver light spread beneath Nara's feet, forming footprints that were not hers. Lissa's. The ghostly path crossed the hall, past the head table, past the bridal chair, toward the western balcony. Nara followed, unable to stop. Darius moved beside her, wolf shadow low and furious. The footprints ended beneath a tapestry of the Western Alliance crest. Selene whispered, "This is absurd." Lissa lifted her glowing hand. The tapestry tore down by itself. Behind it was a hidden door. The hall gasped. Darius looked at Selene. Selene looked at the door. And Nara understood with cold certainty that the dead did not haunt dances because she brought misfortune. They came because music opened the places where murder had been hidden. Darius drew his sword. "Open it." No servant moved. No guard moved. Nara stepped forward. The iron charm at her throat burned cold against her skin. Darius said, "Wait." She stopped because he had said it not as command, but fear. Lissa's ghost touched Nara's shoulder. Only she could feel it. "You were born for thresholds," Lissa whispered. "Not curses." Nara's breath caught. Behind the hidden door, something began to knock. Once, twice, 3 times. Like a body inside a wall asking to be found. Selene's perfect face finally cracked, and the dead mate pointed again. Ask her where she put my heart. Ask her where she put my heart. The words turned the bonding hall into a tomb. No one laughed now. No one whispered that Nara was cursed. No one lifted a cup or looked toward the musicians as if this could still be folded back into entertainment. The hidden door behind the torn western tapestry knocked again from the inside, 3 slow strikes that made the candle flames shrink blue and thin. Lady Selene Morcant stood beneath the moonstone bridal crown, white silk gleaming around her like innocence made expensive. But her face had gone still, too still. Prince Darius Veyr held his sword at his side, not raised yet, but ready. His wolf shadow crouched low behind him, black fur bristling, silver eyes fixed on the hidden door as if it could smell old blood through the stone. Nara stood closest to the door. The iron wolf skull charm at her throat burned with cold. The bells around her ankles had gone silent. Behind her, Lissa's ghost waited in moonlight, one hand resting near Nara's shoulder without touching it. Ask her where she put my heart. Darius turned to Selene. Answer. Selene's lips parted. A single tear slipped down her cheek. It was perfect. Nara almost admired the discipline of it. My prince, Selene whispered, you are grieving again. This dancer has dragged your wound open in front of every house. I do not blame you for wanting meaning, but there is nothing behind that door except an old passage. The hidden door knocked again. This time the sound was wet. A noblewoman screamed. Darius's voice dropped. Open it. Selene moved quickly. No, the word was bare now. Not polished, not careful, just fear. The hall heard it. Darius took one step toward her. Why? Selene looked around the court, searching for allies. Her father's men stood near the western pillars, hands close to their sword hilts, but none moved yet. Not while the dead mate watched them. Not while the prince's wolf shadow stood awake. Not while the cursed dancer had become something no one had named. Nara looked at the hidden door. The knocking had stopped, but behind it she heard music, not from the musician's dais. From memory, a violin playing too softly, a woman running, a breath caught in the throat, a heartbeat slowing. Lissa's final dance. Nara stepped toward the door. Darius said quietly, Nara. It was the first time he had spoken her name. Not cursed girl, not dancer, Nara. She looked at him. His face was hard, but his eyes were careful. You do not have to open it. Selene laughed once. How tender. The prince protects the curse now. Darius did not look at her. I am asking. That mattered. More than it should have. Nara turned back to the hidden door. If I do not open it, they will call her a ghost and me a liar. Lissa's cold presence trembled behind her. Nara lifted her hand and pressed her palm to the door. The wood was not wood. It was bone. The door opened inward. A smell rolled into the hall, old dust, dried roses, moon water, and blood hidden too long in a sealed place. Inside was a narrow chamber, without windows. Its walls were covered in black mourning cloth. At the center stood a crystal box on a silver pedestal. Inside the box rested something wrapped in white silk, pulsing faintly with blue light. Darius stopped breathing. Lissa's ghost drifted forward. My heart, she whispered. The court recoiled. Nara stared at the crystal box, horror crawling across her skin. The story said Lissa Thorne had been found with a wound over her heart. The court had called it a border wolf attack. They had said her body was too damaged for open mourning. They had buried her under sealed rites, but they had not buried all of her. Darius entered the chamber slowly. His wolf shadow followed, too large for the little room, its body spilling into the hall like smoke. Selene's voice sharpened behind them. Do not touch it. Darius turned. The look on his face made even the guards step back. Why would you care, he asked, if it is only an old passage? Selene's control cracked another inch. Because some rites are sealed for a reason. Lissa's ghost lifted her hand toward the box. The crystal fogged from within. Words appeared on it, written in frost. Bond severed before death. Darius staggered as if struck. Nara whispered, What does that mean? The old moon priest near the musician's dais answered before Selene could stop him. His voice was thin and terrified. If a true mate's heart is removed before the final breath, the bond can be cut and preserved. It prevents the surviving mate's wolf from following the dead into madness. Darius turned slowly. Preserved where? No one answered. Nara already knew. She looked at the moonstone crown on Selene's head. Lissa did too. The ghost pointed. There. The bridal crown flashed blue. The entire hall gasped as black threads appeared, stretching from the crystal box to Selene's crown, from the crown to the bonding altar, from the altar to the wolf shadow behind Darius. His wolf snarled in agony. Darius dropped to one knee. Nara moved without thinking. She caught his arm before he hit the floor. His skin was burning cold. The moment she touched him, the dance music returned not from instruments, but from the stone, the walls, the hidden chamber, the dead heart in the box. Nara saw it. Lissa on the night of her death, running through this very passage in a torn silver dress. Selene following her with 2 Morcant guards. Lissa clutching a letter in one hand, shouting that Darius must not marry into the Western Alliance because the bride's family had poisoned the border wolves. Selene smiling through tears, telling Lissa that love was beautiful but politics ruled kingdoms. Then the knife. The crystal box. The moonstone crown waiting on a velvet cloth. The vision shattered. Nara fell back, gasping. Darius rose slowly. His voice was no longer grief. It was ruin. You cut out her heart to wear my bond. Selene's tears returned, but now they shook. I saved you. The words were so monstrous the hall went silent. Selene stepped forward, voice breaking with conviction. If Lissa lived, the Western houses would have rebelled. If she died whole, your wolf would have followed her into death. I preserved enough of the bond to keep you alive and close enough to make the new bonding possible. I did what your council was too weak to do. Darius's wolf shadow roared. The sound shattered the crystal chandeliers overhead. Nara flinched. The wolf stopped mid-snarl. It turned toward her. Not obedient. Aware. Selene saw it and whispered, No. Lissa's ghost turned fully to Nara then. You are not cursed, she said. You are Veylborn. The dead walk through your dance because your blood opens what murder seals. Nara's knees weakened. Veylborn. The old priest fell to his knees. Impossible. Lissa's gaze sharpened. Not impossible. Hidden. The bells around Nara's ankles began to glow. One by one, the black ribbons at her wrists turned silver. The curse she had carried all her life changed shape before the entire court. Not death. Witness. Nara looked at Selene. You made me dance because you thought the court would blame me if the dead appeared. Selene's silence answered. Darius looked at Nara, horror and recognition crossing his face. How many times have they used you? Nara thought of banquets, funerals, private chambers, nobles who died after forcing her to perform, ghosts at the edge of candlelight, accusations thrown over bodies already marked by other hands. I do not know, she said. The hidden chamber darkened. Lissa's heart pulsed once inside the crystal box. Then a second ghost appeared behind Nara, an old man with a slit throat. Then a servant boy with drowned eyes. Then a noble woman with a broken neck. Every death blamed on Nara's curse began stepping through the veil, one by one, filling the hidden chamber and spilling into the bonding hall. The court backed away in terror. Nara stood at the center, trembling. Not powerful, not safe, but no longer alone with the blame. The dead turned toward Selene's side of the hall. Then, together, they pointed. Darius lifted his sword. Seal the doors, he said. His wolf shadow rose behind him, fully awake at last. No one leaves until every ghost names who killed them. No one leaves until every ghost names who killed them. The command should have sounded impossible. Instead, the bonding hall obeyed. The great doors stayed sealed. The blue candles burned low and cold. The shattered crystal from the chandeliers glittered across the marble floor like broken ice. Nobles who had laughed at Nara's entrance now pressed themselves against walls and pillars, terrified of the dead they had spent years explaining away. Nara stood in the center of the hall, bells glowing at her ankles. Black ribbons turned silver around her wrists, and the iron wolf-skull charm at her throat cracked down the middle. Around her, the ghosts gathered. The old man with the slit throat, the drowned servant boy, the noble woman with the broken neck, 2 guards with silver punctures under their ribs, a maid with dark water dripping from her sleeves, a musician whose spectral fingers still clutched a bow. More came with every breath, stepping through the thin veil opened by Nara's dance. They did not swarm her. They did not devour the living. They simply stood behind her, quiet and waiting, as if the girl they had blamed for their deaths was the first doorway that had ever opened for their truth. Lady Selene Morcant stared at them with hatred poorly disguised as fear. Darius saw it. So did Nara. The wolf prince stood beside Lissa's heart chamber, sword drawn, black wolf shadow looming behind him. His face had become dangerously calm. Not healed. Not gentle. Calm in the way winter became calm before burying a road. "Begin," he said. The old moon priest trembled near the musician's dais. "Your Highness, the dead cannot testify under court law unless summoned by a sanctioned temple rite." Lissa's ghost turned her head. The priest fell silent. Nara looked at him. "Were they sanctioned when you blamed me?" The question moved through the hall like a blade wrapped in silk. No one answered. The old man with the slit throat stepped forward first. His ghost shimmered faintly, body flickering between age and memory. Nara recognized him then. Lord Brenneth, a minor noble who had forced her to dance at a winter wine supper 2 years ago. By dawn he had been found dead in his bed, throat open by what the court called curse breath. He turned toward the western tables, where a younger lord stood pale and sweating. "My nephew," the ghost rasped. "Poisoned the wine. Cut my throat after I could no longer move. Paid the servants to say the cursed dancer looked at me too long." The younger lord lunged toward the doors. Darius's wolf shadow crossed the hall in a blur and slammed him to the floor without biting. The court screamed. Darius did not look away from the ghost. "Record it." A scribe, shaking so badly ink splashed his sleeve, began to write. The drowned servant boy came next. Nara knew him too. He had carried towels in the guest wing and once slipped her a piece of bread after a feast. He had died after she danced for visiting nobles. They said he followed her shadow into the river. The boy pointed at a captain in Morcant colors. "He held me under because I saw Lady Selene send guards to the moon chapel the night Lissa died." The captain drew his dagger. "Cassian, no, Darius." Her fear was confusing names now, stories, rulers, courts. Nara blinked hard. Darius moved before the captain reached anyone. The prince struck the dagger from his hand and drove him to his knees. "Alive," Nara said before she knew she would speak. Darius looked at her. The hall did too. Her voice shook, but she held the line. "If they die before naming who gave orders, the dead become spectacle again." Darius's wolf shadow growled low. Darius lowered his blade a fraction. "Alive." The captain was bound. Selene laughed under her breath. "You see? She commands you already." Nara turned toward her. "No. I reminded him why you are afraid of witnesses." The silver ribbons around Nara's wrists flared. Another ghost stepped forward, the noblewoman with the broken neck. She pointed not at Selene, but at the old moon priest. "He changed my death rite," she whispered. "I came to confess I had seen the Morcant guards move Lissa's body. He gave me sleep wine. I woke, falling from the east balcony." The priest collapsed. "I was afraid," he sobbed. "Lady Selene said the western houses would burn Veyrhall if the truth came out." Selene's voice sharpened. "You were paid." The priest stared at her. "That was a mistake." Darius heard it. "Paid by whom?" The ghostly noblewoman answered. "Morcant gold. Council seal. Bridal crown fund." The bridal crown on Selene's head pulsed with a sick blue light. Lissa's heart inside the crystal box beat once. Darius's wolf shadow snarled in pain. Nara felt it through the floor. The dead bond still tied into the crown, still feeding Selene's claim, still cutting Darius's wolf, each time truth pulled against it. Lissa appeared beside the box, one hand over the glowing wound in her chest. The crown must be removed. Selene stepped back. "No." Darius raised his sword. "Take it off." "If you touch it," Selene said, "you may kill what remains of her." The words struck him exactly where she intended. Darius froze. Lissa's ghost flickered. Nara understood then. The crown held part of Lissa's severed bond. Removing it by force might scatter what little remained of the dead woman's witness. Selene had made herself a hostage out of the woman she murdered. Darius looked at the crystal box, then at the crown, then at Nara, not commanding, asking without words. Nara's stomach clenched. "I do not know how." Lissa turned to her. "Dance." A chill went through the hall. Nara stepped back. "No." The bells at her ankles dimmed. Lissa's voice softened. "Not for them." Nara's throat burned. All her life, dance had meant being used, displayed, blamed, forced to make cruelty look graceful. Every hall she had entered had taken her body and turned it into entertainment, then turned the deaths afterward into proof she should have stayed invisible. "I do not want to be a doorway," she whispered. For the first time, Darius stepped closer, still not touching. "You do not owe the dead your body," he said. Lissa looked at him with sorrow. "No, she does not." Selene's lips curved. "How touching. Then the crown remains." Nara closed her eyes. The dead waited, not demanding, waiting. That was the difference. No one dragged her. No one lifted her arms. No one struck the drum. Choice felt strange enough to frighten her. She opened her eyes and looked at Lissa. "If I dance, I choose the music." The ghost smiled faintly. Nara turned to the trembling musicians. No feast song, no court dance. The master of music swallowed. What then? Nara looked at the ghosts behind her. The song they were denied. No one understood until the dead began to hum. One by one, the ghosts gave fragments of what had been stolen from them. A lullaby from the drowned boy, a funeral chant from the old lord, a kitchen work song from the maid, a battlefield prayer from the guards, and Lissa's final unfinished bonding melody. The sounds braided together, not beautiful at first, but honest. Nara lifted her arms. The dance began. This time, she did not dance for the court. She danced for the witnesses. Every step drew silver light from the ghosts into the floor. Every turn pulled a black thread from Selene's bridal crown. The moonstones flickered. Selene screamed and grabbed at them, but the crown no longer answered her hands. It answered the dead. Lissa moved behind Nara again, not controlling her, not wearing her body, but walking beside each movement. The ghosts circled them, and the truth rose like mist. The bridal crown cracked. A shard fell. Then another. Blue light poured from the break, carrying Lissa's stolen bond toward the crystal box where her heart waited. Darius dropped to one knee, not in weakness, but because the pain hit his wolf at last. His shadow beast bowed its head and howled, a sound of grief released from a cage. Nara kept dancing until the final moonstone split. The crown broke from Selene's hair and fell to the floor. Lissa's heart flashed once inside the box. Then the ghost of the murdered true mate stepped fully into the hall, no longer tethered to the bride. She stood before Selene. "Now," Lissa said, "I name the hand that held the knife." Lissa stepped fully into the hall and named the hand that held the knife. Selene Morcant. No one moved. The name did not surprise them as much as the certainty did. Courts could survive rumor. Courts could polish suspicion into silence. But a dead woman standing beneath blue candlelight with her stolen heart glowing behind her left no place for elegant doubt. Lady Selene stood in the wreckage of her bridal crown, white silk soaked in cold moonlight, broken moonstones scattered at her feet like fallen teeth. For the first time since Nara had seen her behind the curtain, Selene looked not perfect, not composed, not wounded for display. She looked furious. "You were already dead to the kingdom," Selene said. Darius's wolf shadow surged forward. Nara lifted one hand before she thought. The beast stopped not because she commanded it, but because Darius had learned to hear the pause in her fear. Selene saw that and smiled through shaking lips. "There, again." The cursed dancer raises her hand, and the prince's wolf obeys. Nara lowered her hand slowly. "No. The prince's wolf is listening. You should try it before more dead people correct you." A sound moved through the servants by the pillars, not laughter, too frightened for that, but something close to breath returning. Selene's eyes sharpened. "You think yourself brave because ghosts stand behind you? You are a door, girl, nothing more. Doors are useful until they close." Lissa's ghost turned toward Nara. "She speaks from fear," Lissa said. "No," Selene snapped. "I speak from memory. You all speak as if love feeds kingdoms. It does not. Love ruins treaties. Love makes princes choose women with no army. Love gives wolves power over law." The Western houses would never have accepted Lissa. Her bloodline was too small, her pack too stubborn, her loyalty too clean to purchase. Darius stepped closer, sword still in hand. "So you murdered her?" Selene's face twisted. "I preserved you." You cut out her heart. I kept your wolf from dying with her. The words landed brutally because part of them was true. Darius's wolf shadow trembled. Lissa looked toward him, sadness passing through her moonlit face. Darius's voice roughened. You do not get to call mutilation mercy. Selene's gaze moved across the court. Ask them. Ask every house here whether they wanted a prince broken beyond ruling. Ask them whether they wanted the Western Alliance to fail. Ask them if they would rather have buried one girl or watch the kingdom bleed into civil war. The hall went silent. Too many nobles looked away. Nara understood then why Selene had survived this long. She had not built her lie alone. She had built it from everyone's convenience. Darius saw it too. His jaw tightened. Who knew? No one answered. Lissa's ghost lifted her hand. Behind Nara, the other dead raised theirs. The hall filled with pointing fingers. Not all pointed at Selene. Some pointed to the moon priest, some to Morcant guards, some to noble lords who had signed sealed witness papers, some to musicians who had played over screams, some to servants who had been threatened into washing blood from stone before dawn. Nara's throat tightened. The truth was larger than one bride. It always was. Darius faced the court. Every person named by the dead will remain. A lord in blue velvet stepped back. This is madness. Spirits cannot accuse living houses. Nara turned to him. But living houses can accuse a servant girl of every death that suited them? The lord flushed. The drowned servant boy drifted forward and pointed at him. The lord stopped breathing. Darius looked to the scribe. Name him. The scribe wrote. Selene laughed again, but the sound had cracked at the edges. You will tear your own court apart before your bonding night ends. Darius looked down at the broken bridal crown. Good. The word was quiet. The hall heard it anyway. Nara felt the ground shift under everyone. Not stone, power. The old kind. The kind that held itself together by refusing to ask who paid for its peace. Lissa moved toward the crystal box that held her heart. The blue glow inside pulsed faintly now, no longer dragged toward Selene's crown. Darius followed her, but stopped when the ghost raised a hand. Not yet, Lissa said. Pain crossed his face. What else? My heart was not the only one sealed. The ghost behind Nara turned toward the hidden chamber. The walls began to glow. At first Nara thought the moonlight was reflecting off the silver pedestal. Then she saw the outlines. Small compartments hidden behind mourning cloth, each one marked with a different symbol. A wolf tooth, a broken ring, a servant bell, a child's shoe. The old priest made a sound of horror. Nara looked at him. What are they? He whispered. Bond relics. Selene, he said. Silence. Darius rounded on the priest. Speak. The priest sagged beneath the weight of it. When a death threatened an alliance, part of the bond was preserved. A heart, a breath, a lock of hair, a final vow, enough to redirect grief, enough to make the living accept the story written for them. Nara stared at the wall. The dead behind her grew brighter. Every death blamed on her curse had left something here. Not accidents, not bad luck. Evidence. Darius turned to Selene, voice low. This chamber has been used for years. Selene did not deny it. Instead, she lifted her chin. The Morcant house did what weaker rulers begged us to do quietly. We kept bonds from destroying policy. Nara stepped toward the wall and touched the compartment marked with a servant bell. A vision burst open. The drowned servant boy hiding behind the Moonchapel pillar, watching Selene's guards carry Lissa's body. He ran. He was caught. His breath was sealed in a glass bead before he was drowned. So his ghost could never speak unless a veil-born dancer opened the way. Nara pulled back, shaking. Another compartment opened by itself. The maid with dark water dripping from her sleeves appeared beside her relic, a strip of apron cloth. She had seen the drowned boy taken. She was silenced next. Another, the musician who had played the death song the night Lissa died. His fingers had been preserved in wax so the music could be repeated without his testimony. Nara covered her mouth. Darius's wolf shadow released a low, wounded growl. Lissa looked at Nara. This is why your dance opened us. They tied death to music and called you the curse. Nara's eyes burned. All those years, all those rooms. Every time someone died after she danced, people had looked at her with disgust and fear. They had made her carry deaths that had already been arranged, deaths sealed in walls and relics and noble agreements. She was not the curse. She had been the only crack in the sealed door. Selene watched her with cold satisfaction. Does it comfort you, knowing you were useful? Darius moved, but Nara spoke first. No. Her voice was quiet. It makes me certain. The bells at her ankles rang once. The sound was no longer warning. It was witness. Nara turned to the dead. Do you want the relics opened? One by one, the ghosts answered. Yes. Darius looked at her, then at the court. Open them. The guards hesitated. Then servants moved first. A kitchen woman stepped forward and tore down the first strip of mourning cloth. A stable hand opened the next compartment. A young page carried relics to the scribes with trembling hands. Soon the hidden chamber became a place of names. Bond relics, sealed deaths, murdered witnesses, alliances preserved by silence. Selene's courtly mask was gone now. You cannot record all of them, she said. There are too many. Nara turned back to her. Then we begin with yours. Lissa's ghost stepped before Selene, bright and terrible. Darius stood beside the dead woman he had loved and the living girl who had opened the truth. For once, his sword was not raised. His voice was worse for being calm. Lady Selene Morcant, before the dead, the living, the court, and the wolves of Veyrhall, you will name who helped you murder my mate. Selene's mouth curved in a final desperate smile. And if I refuse? The dead behind Nara lifted their heads. The bells at Nara's ankles rang without movement. Lissa answered for all of them. Then we dance again. Then we dance again. The bells at Nara's ankles rang once. Lady Selene Morcant stopped smiling. That was the first honest thing she had done all night. The hidden chamber behind the torn western tapestry pulsed with blue-white moonlight. Bond relics lay exposed in their secret compartments. Locks of hair, broken rings, blood-sealed vows, preserved breath, finger bones, strips of wedding silk, small personal tokens taken from the dead so their truths could be redirected, muted, or owned. The bonding feast had become a grave ledger. The noble tables were abandoned. The musicians huddled near the wall. The servants stood closer to the center now, not fully brave, not yet safe, but watching. Nara stood before Selene with Lissa's ghost at her side and the other dead gathered behind her like a court no living king had summoned. Darius Veyr held his sword low. His wolf shadow waited behind him, massive, black, and awake, its silver eyes fixed on the woman wearing what remained of a bridal crown. Selene lifted her chin. You think another dance frightens me? Nara looked at the ghosts. Ooh. I think being named does. The words struck harder than threat. Selene's eyes flickered toward the western doors. Darius saw it. Do not. A Morcant guard near the pillars moved anyway. The dead moved faster, not touching him, not harming him. They turned their faces toward him at once, and the air around his body frosted over with memory. He froze mid-step, shaking, while the ghost of the drowned servant boy pointed at the dagger hidden beneath his sleeve. The scribe wrote his name. The guard dropped the weapon. Selene's mouth tightened. This is not justice, this is theater. Nara glanced at the ruined feast tables, the cold candles, the nobles in ceremonial silk who had come to watch a cursed girl humiliate herself for their amusement. Yes, she said. That is what your court understands. A murmur passed through the servants. Darius looked at Nara, and something like grim respect crossed his face. Not admiration dressed as possession. Something quieter. He saw the cost in her trembling hands. He saw the way the ghosts leaned toward her without devouring her. He saw that she was not becoming powerful because she wished to rule the dead. She was simply refusing to carry blame that belonged elsewhere. Lissa stepped closer to Selene. Name them, the dead mate said. Name who opened the moon chapel. Name who held me down. Name who prepared the crown. Name who told Darius my body was torn by wolves. Selene stared at her. For one heartbeat, the perfect noble woman vanished. Beneath her stood a frightened woman who had built herself into a weapon because she had mistaken fear for destiny. Then the weapon returned. My father opened the chapel, she said. Gasps moved through the Morcant side of the hall. Darius's eyes sharpened. Lord Morcant. Selene's smile trembled. He believed the Western Alliance would collapse if you bonded with Lissa. He said love makes princes easy to kill. Lissa's glow flickered, but she did not vanish. The guards? Darius asked. Selene looked toward the bound captain. Morcant men. 2 are dead. 3 stand in this hall. 3 men tried not to move. The ghost pointed. The scribes wrote. The crown? Nara asked. Selene's gaze cut to her. You are enjoying this? No. Nara's voice was almost a whisper. I am remembering every night they made me dance beside someone already marked to die. The bells glowed silver. Selene looked away first. That mattered. The crown was prepared by the moon priest and my aunt, Lady Corvina. She knew the old heart, severing rights. The old priest collapsed fully, sobbing into the floor. Darius looked at him with disgust. You blessed my bonding crown with my mate's heart. The priest shook. I was told the prince would die if the bond was not preserved. Lissa's voice sharpened. You were told I would not be noble enough to matter. The priest had no answer. Nara felt the dead behind her shift. More names waited. More relics waited. The truth was growing too large for one night, but if they stopped too soon, Selene's allies would spend the dawn turning horror into confusion. Darius understood. Bring witness chests, he ordered. Every relic is sealed in public record. Every named accomplice remains under guard. Every servant who was forced to clean, carry, sing, play, or dance for these rites may speak without punishment. A noble lord protested, Your Highness, this will implicate half the bonding houses. Darius turned toward him. Then half the bonding houses will learn what witness means. The lord sat down. Selene laughed softly. You sound righteous now. But when the West withdraws its armies, when your father demands a bride to hold the border, when every house asks whether the Wolf Prince has chosen a cursed dancer over political survival, Darius looked at Nara. The hall looked with him. Nara hated that more than the insults. The sudden weight of becoming the question at the center of power. She had seen how courts did this. They took a woman's suffering and made it a test for a man's honor. They turned her into proof, symbol, temptation, danger. She stepped back before the story could close around her. No, she said. Darius's brow tightened. Nara faced the court. Do not make me the reason truth is difficult. Your murdered mate is standing here. Your relics are in the wall. Your priests confessed. Your bride named her father. If the Western Alliance breaks, it breaks because it was built over a stolen heart, not because a servant dancer survived the performance. Lissa looked at her with something like pride. Darius lowered his head once. She is right. Selene's expression sharpened with hate. Of course you agree. Your wolf woke for her. The hall went silent again. Nara's chest tightened. Darius's wolf shadow did not move, but its silver eyes turned toward her. It was true. Since Lissa's appearance, since Nara opened the veil, since the dead began naming murder, Darius's wolf had remained awake. Not healed, not free of grief, but awake. And it watched Nara in a way that made the court hungry for a simpler scandal. Cursed dancer replaces dead mate. That would be easier to swallow than murder, relics, and political rot. Lissa saw the danger. She did not take my place, the ghost said, voice ringing through the hall. She opened the door you sealed over me. Nara looked at Darius. And you do not get to make me a new door. Pain moved through his face, but he accepted it. No. The answer came quickly. Not defensively, like a vow he knew was only the beginning. Selene's lost smile faded. Witness chests were brought. Servants carried the bond relics out one by one and named where they had been found. The drowned boy's breath bead, the maid's apron cloth, the musician's wax-sealed fingers. Lissa's heart remained in the crystal box until the old rites could be undone before moon and witness. Near midnight, Lady Corvina Morcant was dragged from the eastern guest wing, still wearing a mourning robe and pearls. When she saw the ghosts, her knees failed. Selene closed her eyes. That was how the court knew Lady Corvina had more names. Nara stood through it until her legs shook. When she nearly stumbled, Darius took one step, then stopped. He asked, "May I bring you a chair?" The question was so strange in that hall of ghosts and blood that Nara almost laughed. Instead, she nodded. A chair was brought not to the dais, not beside the prince, but near the open chamber where the dead could still reach her if they chose. Nara sat because standing did not make her stronger when her body was failing. Lissa came to stand beside her. "You have carried enough blame," the ghost said. Nara looked at the broken bells around her ankles. "Then why do I feel heavier?" "Because truth gives back what shame stole. Sometimes it returns as grief first." Across the hall, Darius watched the crystal box containing Lissa's heart. His wolf shadow lay beside him, no longer roaring, but grieving with its head low. The bonding feast did not end. It became a vigil. And before dawn, the first living witness stepped forward and confessed that Nara's curse had been manufactured long before she ever danced. Before dawn, the first living witness stepped forward. She was not noble. That was why the court almost failed to notice her. A laundry woman stood near the lowest pillar with both hands twisted into her apron, her hair pinned badly, her face pale from years of lowering her eyes before people who thought linen cleaned itself. Nara had seen her before in the servant corridors. She was called Mina, though most nobles called her girl even though she was old enough to have buried 2 husbands. Mina looked at Nara first. Not at Darius, not at the ghosts. At Nara. "I washed the first blood," she whispered. The hall went still. Darius turned slowly. His wolf shadow lifted its head. Mina swallowed hard. "Not Lissa's. Earlier. Years earlier." Before the court called, Nara cursed. Nara's fingers tightened around the edge of the chair. Lady Selene, bound now beneath the western arch, looked suddenly alert. Toe alert. Lady Corvina Morcant sat on the floor nearby under guard, pearls tangled in her gray hair, her face wet with ruined pride. When Mina spoke, Corvina shut her eyes. "Darius saw." "Continue," he said. Mina's voice shook. "There was a child brought to the lower hall after a storm. She had no housemark, no papers, only bells tied around her blanket." Nara stopped breathing. The bells at her ankles rang once without movement. Mina began to cry. "I remember because one bell was broken. It made no sound. Lady Corvina came herself. She said the child was Veyrhall, touched, and must be kept in service, not temple custody. She said if the court learned what the child could do, every grieving house would fight to own her." Nara felt the hall tilt. She had imagined, in the private places where loneliness invented softer lies, that she had once belonged to someone who wanted her. A mother who died, a family who searched, a pack that lost her in war. She had never imagined she had been found and deliberately kept where pain could be used without paperwork. Corvina opened her eyes. "I saved her from the temple." Mina flinched. Selene laughed faintly. "You saved a knife because you knew one day it would cut someone useful." Nara looked at Corvina. "What am I?" The question came out smaller than she wanted. Corvina studied her, and for a moment Nara saw no remorse. Only calculation deciding which truth would cost the least. Darius stepped forward. "Answer her." Corvina lifted her chin. "Veil born." The old moon priest bowed his head. Nara's throat tightened. "Lissa said that." Corvina's mouth thinned. Lissa should never have known enough to say it. Lissa's ghost brightened with cold anger. Corvina continued. "The Veilborn were not common mediums. They were threshold blood. In ancient courts, they danced at funerals, vows, trials, and war returns, because the dead could step through their movement long enough to finish broken witness. They were protected once." "Once," Nara repeated. Corvina's gaze drifted toward the bond relics, until rulers realized a protected witness cannot be controlled. There it was, the old story beneath every new cruelty. A gift turned into a curse because power could not own it safely. Mina wiped her face with trembling fingers. "They made us call you death. Touched. They told servants never to comfort you after performances. They said if you believed yourself cursed, you would never learn to open the veil by choice." Nara felt the words strike deeper than insult ever had. If you believed yourself cursed, all the years of fear, every flinch, every whispered prayer when she entered a room, every noble who forced her to dance and then blamed her when their chosen victim died, every servant who pitied her from a distance, but never stood close enough to be punished with her. Note accident. Training. She looked at Selene. "You knew." Selene's smile was tired now, but still sharp. Everyone important knew something. Darius's wolf shadow growled. Nara stood from the chair too quickly. The room swayed. Lissa reached toward her, unable to hold her with living hands. Darius took one step. Nara raised her hand not to stop him like a beast, but to hold the space around herself. He stopped. Good. She needed to speak standing. You used me before tonight, Nara said. Selene said nothing. Nara turned toward the bond relics. Every time someone needed to die cleanly, you put me in the room. Corvina's face closed. Mina whispered, Yes. The words spread through the hall like spilled ink. Darius faced the scribes. Record Mina's witness. A noble lord protested weakly. Servant testimony cannot stand against house record. Darius turned to him. Then house record will learn to kneel. The scribe wrote. The dead behind Nara stirred, and one more ghost stepped forward. This one made Corvina gasp. A woman in a torn traveling cloak, dark-haired, with bells tied to her wrist. Her face was thin, but her eyes were Nara's. Nara could not move. The woman looked at her with a sorrow so tender it hurt more than fear. My little Belle, the ghost whispered. The words broke Nara open. Not loudly. She made no dramatic sound. Her breath simply left her body, and she stood there empty of every wall she had built around the question of being wanted. Lissa moved aside, giving the ghost space. Darius lowered his sword. Even the wolf shadow bowed its head. Nara's voice barely lived. Mother? The ghost smiled through tears. Yes. Corvina whispered no. The ghost turned toward her. Yes, Lady Corvina. You remember me. The hidden chamber darkened. Another memory unfolded, not through dance this time, but through blood, recognizing blood. A storm rode. A woman running with an infant under her cloak. Morcant riders behind her. Bells tied around the baby's blanket to keep the veil closed. The woman reaching the lower gate of Veyrhall and begging sanctuary. Not knowing the house she begged from had already sold witness blood to noble courts. Corvina standing in the rain, taking the child, ordering the mother removed before dawn. Nara's hands shook. Did you kill her? Corvina looked away. The ghost answered. Not with her own hand. Darius's voice became deadly. Whose? The ghost pointed toward Lady Corvina's guards. Only one old guard remained alive. He stood near the eastern wall, face gray, knees weakening before the dead even named him. I was ordered, he whispered. Nara looked at him. The phrase sounded so small beside a stolen life. Ordered, as if obedience made murder lighter. Her mother's ghost stepped closer. My name was Selene Veyr. I came from the Old Vale caravans. We were not curses. We carried the last words of the dead, so the living could not build peace on lies. Nara pressed both hands to her mouth. Selene looked back at her. They kept you because your blood could open what they sealed. They broke your bells so you would fear your own music. But you were never death's daughter. You were witness-born. The bells at Nara's ankles shone silver white. Every ghost in the hall bowed its head to Selene. Selene's voice cut through the silence, bitter and afraid. Touching. Will you now crown the dancer queen of corpses? Nara turned. For the first time, Selene's words did not enter her like poison. They struck something outside her and fell. No, Nara said. I am not your curse, not his replacement, not their doorway to use, and not the dead's crown. The hall listened. I am Nara Vire, she said, her mother's name trembling in her mouth and then settling there. And every death you hid behind my dance will be named. The veil opened wider. Not violently, like a door accepting the hand that finally knew it owned the key. Behind the first row of ghosts, more shapes appeared, fainter, older, waiting beyond the blue candlelight. Darius looked at Nara, then at the dead, then at the living court that had made a weapon from a child. His voice was low. The feast is over. The witness trial begins now. Outside, the moon rose over Veyrhall. Inside, Nara's broken bell rang for the first time, and this time it made a sound. The feast ended, and the trial of the dead began. No trumpet announced it. No priest blessed it. No noble lord stood to declare the proper order of witness, because the proper order of Veyrhall had already been exposed as a language for hiding knives. The bonding hall remained sealed beneath blue candlelight, with shattered crystal underfoot, broken moonstones scattered like fallen stars, and the hidden relic chamber opened behind the torn western tapestry. Nara Vire stood at the center of the hall with her mother's name still trembling inside her. Vire, not veil, not cursed girl, not death dancer. Vire, a name from the old veil caravans, a bloodline once protected because it allowed the dead to finish broken witness. A bloodline later hunted because rulers feared anyone who could make murder speak. The broken bell at her ankle rang softly with every breath. Her mother's ghost, Selene Veyr, stood near her left shoulder. Lissa Thorne, murdered true mate of Wolf Prince Darius, stood near her right. Behind them gathered the dead once blamed on Nara's curse, their faces turned toward the living court with the patience of wounds that had waited years to be named. Darius faced the room. Every door remains sealed until the first witness record is complete. A Morcant lord snapped, "You cannot hold royal houses captive because a servant girl has filled the hall with ghosts." Darius looked at him. "No, I hold you because the ghosts keep pointing at your table." The lord went silent. Nara almost felt the old fear rise almost. The fear that any anger from nobles would land on her body later, in a corridor, where no prince or ghost would stand nearby. But then the bells rang again, one clear silver note, and the dead behind her moved closer. Not to protect her like property, to remind her she was no longer alone. The first witness chest was placed before the scribes. Into it went Lissa's broken crown shards, the moon priest's confession, the names Selene had spoken, and the crystal box containing Lissa's heart. The box still pulsed faintly, but no longer toward Selene. It pulsed toward the open air, as if waiting for a rite that would release it without erasing what had been done. Darius looked at Nara. "Can she speak again?" He meant Lissa. Nara listened to the veil. The dead were not endless. That was the mercy and the cruelty of it. They could step close through music, relic, blood, and witness, but every moment cost them shape. Lissa's edges had begun to blur. "She can," Nara said, "but not forever." Darius absorbed that like a blade through the ribs. "Then ask what she needs first. Not what I need. Not what the court needs. What she needs." Lissa's ghost looked at him, and for the first time that night, her anger softened into grief. "My heart must not be buried under your name," she said. Darius went still. The court watched closely, eager for a romantic tragedy they could understand. Lissa continued, "Do not make me only your murdered mate. I was Lissa Thorne before I was yours, daughter of the Thorn River Pack, rider of the Eastern Moon Road, witness to the Morcant border poisonings. The reason I died was not love alone. I found their crimes." Nara saw Darius's face change. He had loved the wound most visible to him. Now the dead woman was asking him to see the rest of her life. He bowed his head. "Then it will be written." Lissa turned to the scribes. "Write my name whole." The scribe dipped his quill with shaking fingers. "Lissa Thorne, daughter of the Thorn River Pack. Witness murdered before royal bonding. Heart severed to preserve false alliance." As the words entered record, Lissa's glow steadied. Not brighter. Trua. Then the other ghosts began. Lord Brenneth named his nephew and the wine plot. The drowned servant boy named the Morcant captain who held him under black water. The maid named the priest who changed her death rite. The musician named the order that sealed his fingers in wax so the death song could be repeated without him. Each name entered the witness record. Each relic was placed into a chest. Each living accomplice was bound, not killed, because Nara had said death too soon would turn evidence into ashes. Selene watched from beneath the western arch, hands chained in silver, white dress ruined, face composed again in that frightening way of hers. When the fifth ghost finished, she said, "You think record will save you from politics?" Nara turned. Selene's smile was thin. "By sunrise, the western houses will say Darius was bewitched by a veil-born servant. They will say Lissa's ghost was a grief illusion. They will say these servants lied to save their positions. They will say I confessed under death magic." Darius's wolf shadow snarled. Nara did not. She was beginning to understand Selene's pattern. When the murder could not be denied, she attacked the shape of the witness. When the witness stood, she attacked the cost of believing it. Nara stepped closer. "Then you will repeat your confession before the moon court." Selene's eyes flashed. There. Fear. Darius saw it. Why does that frighten you? The old moon priest answered before Selene could. The moon court accepts wolf witness as equal to noble witness. It has not been opened since your grandfather's reign. Why? The priest lowered his head. Because wolves do not respect political necessity. The sentence hung there like a confession. Darius looked toward the great doors. At dawn, the moon court opens. A wave of panic moved through the nobles. Lady Corvina spoke from the floor, voice dry and poisonous. Open the moon court, and every wolf bound by alliance will hear the dead. You will not control what follows. Darius looked at Nara. This time the court expected him to ask whether she could control it. He did not. He asked, "Will the dead stand there if you choose to open the way?" Nara listened. The ghost behind her stirred, not demanding, not begging, waiting for the answer to belong to her. "Yes," she said, "but I will not dance because the court requires spectacle. I will open the way only for witness." Darius nodded. "Then no one will ask for spectacle." The answer settled into Nara slowly. She had been made into entertainment so long that being believed without performance felt almost unreal. Near dawn, the bonding hall doors opened at last. Not to release the guilty. To move the trial under sky. The moon court lay beyond the eastern terrace, a circular courtyard of pale stone surrounded by carved wolf pillars and old ash trees. No throne stood there. No bridal dais. No musician's platform. Only a flat silver moonstone at the center, veined with black lines from judgments older than the palace itself. The nobles entered pale and silent. The servants came next. Then the wolves. Not shadow wolves only, but living wolves from the royal kennels, from the lower yards, from the forest edge beyond the walls. They came without muzzles, without leashes, without command. Darius stepped into the moon court crownless. Selene was brought forward in chains. Nara stood before the moonstone, bells glowing around her ankles, her mother's ghost and Lissa's ghost beside her. She did not dance. She only placed one bare foot on the moonstone and spoke her name. Nara Vire. The moonstone answered with silver light. Every wolf in the court lowered its head. Not to a queen, to a witness. And behind Nara, the dead stepped into dawn. Behind Nara, the dead stepped into dawn. The moon court did not scream. That was what made the moment feel sacred. In the bonding hall, ghosts had been horror because the living had tried to keep them trapped inside music, relics, and blame. Under open sky, with pale morning light spreading over the carved wolf pillars and the old ash trees, the dead looked less like a curse and more like witnesses who had finally found a place where no ceiling could hold their voices down. Nara stood barefoot on the silver moonstone. Her bells glowed softly around her ankles. The black veil was gone. The ash-gray silk still clung to her body, torn from the night's revelations, but the shame sewn into it had begun to loosen. Her mother's ghost stood to her left. Lissa Thorne stood to her right. Behind them gathered every death the court had once laid at Nara's feet. Wolf Prince Darius stood several steps away, not beside her like a claim, not above her like a judge, near enough to stand witness, far enough to show the court she was not speaking because he held her there. The distinction mattered. The wolves seemed to understand it before the nobles did. One by one they lowered their heads toward the moonstone. Royal wolves, kennel wolves, forest wolves that had come to the gates when the veil opened. Darius's wolf shadow stood behind him, enormous and black, no longer silent, no longer collapsed by grief, its silver eyes fixed on Lissa with sorrow and on Nara with something careful, almost reverent. Lady Selene Morcant was brought to the edge of the circle in chains. Her bridal silk was ruined. Her broken moonstone crown had been sealed in a witness chest. Without it, she looked smaller, but not weaker. Her power had never only been jewels. It lived in the way she studied the court, searching for every noble still willing to fear truth more than murder. Darius faced the moon court. The witness trial begins. An old Morcant lord spat at the stone. A trial led by ghosts and a cursed dancer is not law. Nara turned toward him. Then stand on the moonstone and say that where the wolves can hear you. He did not move. The first record chest was opened. Lissa stepped forward. The dawn passed through her body, but her voice remained clear. My name is Lissa Thorne. I was daughter of the Thorn River Pack before I was promised to Darius Veyr. I discovered the Morcant house had poisoned border wolves to force a Western alliance. I was murdered before the bonding. My heart was severed, preserved, and used to strengthen a false bridal crown. The moonstone flared. Every wolf in the courtyard growled. Not wildly. In recognition, the scribe wrote each word. Darius did not look away. Pain crossed his face, but he did not make Lyssa's testimony about his grief. Nara saw the effort it took. That mattered more than another dramatic vow would have. Selene lifted her chin. Convenient. The dead woman speaks exactly what the dancer needs. Lyssa turned toward her. No, she said, I speak what you buried. Nara placed one hand against the moonstone. The stone answered her bloodline, not with power that roared, but with a low silver hum. The veil opened wider behind Lyssa, and the crystal box containing her heart glowed inside the witness chest. The preserved heart pulsed once. A memory rose above it for the entire moon court to see. Selene in the moon chapel, not weeping, not afraid, standing over Lyssa with the severing blade in her hand while Morcant guards held the dying woman still. The courtyard fell silent. Selene's face remained composed, but her throat moved. The moonstone recorded the memory in silver lines. Darius spoke quietly. Witness accepted. The dead came one by one. Lord Brenneth named his nephew, and the poisoned wine. The drowned servant boy named the Morcant captain. The maid named the priest who altered her burial. The musician named the order that forced him to replay Lyssa's death song until his fingers were sealed in wax. Each testimony drew a memory from the relic chest. Each memory burned across the moonstone, long enough for scribes to copy the names. Some nobles tried to protest. The wolves turned their heads toward them. The protest died. Then Selene Veyr, Nara's mother, stepped forward. Nara's entire body tightened. She wanted to be strong for this. She did not know how. Darius saw her fingers curl and said nothing. He did not reach for her. He simply shifted slightly, blocking the strongest wind from where she stood. Such a small thing. Almost nothing, but it let her breathe. Selene placed her spectral hand over the moonstone. My name was Selene Veyr of the Veil Caravans. I carried my daughter to Veyrhall seeking sanctuary. Lady Corvina Morcant took the child and ordered me removed before dawn. I was killed outside the lower gate. My daughter was kept in service under a false curse, so her gift could be used without protection. The moonstone glowed white. A memory opened. Nara saw it fully this time. Her mother running through rain with a bundled child, bells tied to the blanket, begging at the lower gate. Corvina Morcant taking the baby with soft hands and cold eyes. The old guard dragging Selene into the alley before sunrise. A blade. A bell falling into mud. Nara did make a sound then. Small. Broken. Darius's wolf shadow lowered its head as if the sound itself hurt. Corvina, bound near the Morcant table, whispered, I kept the child alive. Nara turned toward her. The moon court watched. You kept me useful, Nara said. Corvina's face tightened. Nara's voice shook, but she did not stop. You let them call me cursed. You let them drag me to banquets and deathbeds and secret rooms. You let me believe every death was my fault because fear made me easier to guide. Corvina looked away. The moonstone did not. It burned her silence into record. Then Selene spoke. You want the truth? Her voice rang through the courtyard, colder than the dawn. Yes, we used her. Yes, we used the dead. Yes, Lyssa died because she threatened the Western Alliance, and if we had not done it, the Thorn River Pack would have pulled Darius into a border war the crown was too weak to win. Darius's expression darkened. Selene turned toward him. You loved her. That made you blind. Lyssa's ghost remained still. Selene continued. I did not kill her because I enjoyed it. I killed her because the kingdom needed a bride who understood power. Nara looked at the wolves. Every one of them had gone silent, not obedient, waiting. Darius stepped onto the moonstone. The nobles gasped. A prince did not stand on witness stone unless he accepted judgment too. Darius faced Selene. Then let the moon court hear my blindness as well. I did not question enough when Lyssa died. I let grief become obedience. I let your house arrange my silence because mourning was easier than tearing open every lie surrounding her death. Selene stared at him. That confession robbed her of something. She had wanted his denial, his defensiveness, his royal pride. He gave her witness instead. Darius turned toward the scribes. "Record it." The scribe wrote. Nara looked at him then, really looked. Not as prince, not as grieving mate, not as dangerous man whose wolf had woken near her, as someone who had chosen to stand where truth could cut him too. The moonstone brightened beneath them both. Selene's chains he set. Not from magic hurting her. From the hidden black threads still wrapped around her wrists, leading outward beyond the moon court, beyond the palace walls. Nara saw them now. So did Lissa. "There are more relic rooms," Lissa said. Selene smiled faintly. The Morcant lord shifted. Nara's stomach tightened. "Where?" Selene said nothing. The moonstone answered for her. Black threads rose from Selene's wrists and stretched toward the western road, toward the Morcant winter keep, toward the old border chapel, toward distant houses that had purchased silence from the Veil rites. The trial had opened more than Lissa's murder. It had opened a network. Darius looked at the threads. How many? Corvina gave a bitter laugh. Enough to make this court regret dawn. Nara looked at the ghosts behind her. Their forms flickered. They could not stand forever. Witness needed living hands now. She turned to Darius. "If we stop here, they will call this one night of cursed spectacle." He nodded slowly. "Then we do not stop here." Selene's eyes sharpened. "You will start war," Nara answered before Darius could. "No, you started one and named it peace." The moonstone flared. The wolves howled. Not for blood. For witness. Darius faced the court. Lady Selene Morcant, Lady Corvina Morcant, and all named accomplices will remain alive under guard. Every relic room tied to Morcant law will be opened before Moon Witness. Every servant who was used to clean, carry, dress, play, or dance for sealed deaths may speak without punishment. Every death blamed on Nara Vire's curse will be reviewed. A Western lord shouted. "And the bonding?" Darius looked at the shattered crown in the witness chest. "There will be no bonding built on a stolen heart." The answer rolled across Veyrhall, like the first honest bell. Lissa's ghost closed her eyes. Her form began to fade. Darius saw and stepped forward, then stopped. Not reaching, not holding, respecting the leaving he had been denied 3 years ago. Lissa looked at him. "Let my heart go home to the river." His voice broke. "I will." Then she turned to Nara. "You are not cursed when the dead answer you," Lissa said. "You are cursed only if the living force you to carry them alone." Nara's eyes filled. Lissa smiled once, sad and luminous. Then she vanished into dawn. The crystal box went dark. For the first time, Darius's wolf shadow did not howl in agony. It bowed its head and grieved freely. Nara stood on the moonstone, surrounded by ghosts fading into record and living witnesses beginning to move. The trial had ended its first chapter. The kingdom's reckoning had just begun. The kingdom's reckoning began before the ghosts fully faded. At first, no one moved. The moon court held its breath beneath the pale dawn, as if Veyrhall itself feared that one careless sound might undo what had finally been named. The silver moonstone still glowed beneath Nara's bare feet. The witness chest stood open around the circle, filled with broken crown shards, bond relics, sealed confessions, and the darkened crystal box that had held Lissa Thorne's stolen heart. The wolves remained lowered, not in submission, but in respect for the dead who had spoken, and the living who now had to carry the record forward. Darius stood a few steps from Nara, crownless, his black cloak wet with morning mist, his wolf shadow bowed beside him. Lissa was gone, not erased, not trapped, gone in the way a soul went when it had finally been heard. That freedom left an emptiness in him so visible that even the nobles did not dare look directly at it. But Nara saw. She also saw the way he did not reach for her to fill it. That mattered. Lady Selene Morcant stood in chains at the edge of the moon court, her ruined white bridal silk dragging across the stone. Lady Corvina sat beside her under guard, old eyes cold with calculation even now. The Morcant lords whispered among themselves, already measuring how much truth could be survived, how many accomplices could be sacrificed, how quickly the story could be reshaped before it reached the border houses. Nara heard none of their words clearly. She did not need to. The dead had taught her that guilt had a sound, even when silence dressed it well. Darius turned to the captain of the royal guard. "Send riders to the Thorn River Pack." Lissa's heart will be returned under moon witness. No Morcant banner rides with it. End of 4. Quote, End of Lixa 0. The captain bowed. Yes, your highness. And send to the western road, Darius continued. Every chapel, keep, and relic chamber tied to the Morcant house is sealed until witness arrives. No burning of records, no private rites, no sudden funerals. A Morcant lord protested. You cannot seize western sanctuaries without council vote. Darius looked at him. I am not seizing them. I am preventing murder from cleaning its room before the court enters. The lord went pale. Nara looked toward the witness chests. The servants must have copies. The court turned to her. She felt the old instinct to step back, to apologize for speaking where nobles could hear. Then her broken bell rang once at her ankle, soft but clear, and she remembered her mother's name. Darius did not answer for her. He waited. So Nara spoke again. The servants carried the bodies, washed the floors, dressed the brides, played the songs, lit the candles, opened the curtains. They were forced to help hide crimes they were never allowed to name. If the record stays only with the court, it can become another locked door. Darius nodded once. 3 records, one for the royal archive, one for the moon court, one for the servant hall. The old moon priest lifted his head weakly. That has never been done. Nara looked at him. Neither has this. No one argued. That was when Selene laughed. Small, broken, still dangerous. You think records will save them? She asked. You think servants reading noble crimes will make them free? They will be beaten in corridors before winter. Darius's wolf shadow lifted its head, but Nara answered first. Then the corridors will need witnesses too. Selene's smile trembled. You cannot stand in every corridor. No, Nara said. That is why you will name everyone who can. The silence that followed was colder than threat. Selene understood. Execution would have made her a tragic villain for Western houses to mourn. Imprisonment without speech would have preserved half her secrets. But witness, living witness, repeated witness, public witness, would turn her from symbol into evidence. Her eyes hardened. I will not help you destroy my house. Darius stepped closer. Your house destroyed itself when it built power from murdered bonds. Selene looked at him with bitter affection twisted into hate. You still do not understand. Houses like mine do not die from guilt. They survive by making guilt useful. Nara stepped onto the edge of the moonstone. The surface warmed beneath her foot. Then we make truth more useful. The wolves stirred. The statement felt impossible the moment she said it. Too large for one girl who had spent her life dancing when ordered and swallowing fear between songs. But it did not have to belong only to her. That was the lesson of the night. The dead had opened the door. The living had to keep it from being sealed again. Mina, the laundrywoman, came forward first. I will speak in the servant hall, she said, voice shaking. I washed blood. I know where some of the floors were scrubbed twice. A stable hand stepped beside her. I know which horses were ridden after midnight. The old musician's apprentice, pale and trembling, said, I know the songs they requested before deaths. One by one, the unseen people of Veyrhall began to become records. Nara watched them and felt something inside her loosen. Not healing. Not yet. But the beginning of a world where blame could no longer be dropped on the quietest body in the room. By noon, Selene and Corvina were taken below, not to a hidden cell, but to the old witness chamber beneath the moon court, where scribes, servants, wolves, and priests would take turns hearing names. The guilty guards were bound alive. The moon priest was stripped of right authority, but kept to identify old symbols. The Morcant lords were forbidden to leave Veyrhall until the western relic rooms were opened. Darius remained in the moon court after the others began to move. Nara stayed too, not because she had been asked, because her mother's ghost had stood there, because Lissa had vanished there, because for the first time in her life, a space that had held terror now held her name without spitting it back as curse. The prince looked toward the eastern horizon. I loved her. Nara did not answer quickly. He was not asking for comfort, so she did not cheapen the truth with it. I know, she said. I also let others decide what her death meant because facing the emptiness was easier than suspecting everyone around me. Nara looked down at the bells around her ankles. They taught me to fear my own gift because that made it easier for them to use it. Darius turned toward her. Their wounds did not mirror each other. That would have been too simple. But they stood close enough that each could recognize the shape of being used by power and then blamed for the damage. "My wolf woke when you danced," he said. Nara's body tightened. Darius saw it immediately. "That is not a claim." She looked at him. His voice was rough, careful. "It is only a truth I do not yet understand, and one I will not use against you." The wolf shadow behind him lowered its head, as if agreeing. Nara breathed. For years, every strange thing near her had become an accusation. Every death, every whisper, every accident. Even now, part of her expected his awakened wolf to become another chain around her ankle. "What if your court does?" she asked. "Then my court will be corrected." "By you?" "By witness," he said. "And by me when witness requires teeth." That almost made her smile. Almost. The first Thorn River riders arrived by dusk. They entered the moon court without music, bearing dark green banners wet from the road. When they saw Lys's heart in the witness chest, their leader, a stern woman with silver at her temples, dropped to one knee and pressed her forehead to the stone. Not before Darius. Before Lys's name. Darius ordered the chest carried to them. He did not touch it first. He did not make a speech about his love. He let her people receive her. Nara watched his restraint and understood how much it cost. The thorn woman turned to Nara. "You opened the way?" Nara hesitated. "The dead did. I only danced when I chose to." The woman nodded. "Then the river remembers your choice." That night, Lys's heart was carried from Veyrhall under moon witness, surrounded by thorn riders, royal guards, servants who had written the record, and wolves who walked without command. Darius stood at the gate until the last torch vanished down the eastern road. Nara stood beside him, not touching, wrapped in a plain dark cloak someone had brought from the servants' quarters. The ash-gray dance silk had been removed and sealed into evidence with the bells, except the broken one. Nara kept that at her ankle. It had found its sound. When the procession disappeared, Darius finally spoke. "You may leave Veyrhall." Nara looked at him. "If you stay," he said, "it will not be as court dancer, not as curse, breaker, not as my replacement for grief, not as the door the dead must use whenever the living are too cowardly to speak." The words settled around her carefully, leaving space. "And if I stay?" she asked. "Then you choose when you dance, when you do not, whose witness you open, and when the court has asked enough of your body." Nara looked back at the palace. The bonding hall still glowed blue through the tall windows. The moon court remained open. Somewhere below, Selene was beginning to name the first relic room. Somewhere in the servant hall, Mina was telling others what she had washed from stone. Somewhere on the eastern road, Lyssa was going home. Nara thought of her mother, Selene Veyr, running through rain with bells tied around a child's blanket. She thought of every room where she had danced afraid. Then she lifted her chin. "I will stay until every death blamed on, my curse is reopened, until every relic room is named, until the servants have records they can read, until no girl is made to dance beside murder and then blamed for the body." Darius bowed his head. "It will be done." "And after?" he asked quietly. The question was not a hook, not a claim, just a door left closed until she chose to open it. Nara looked at the broken bell at her ankle. "After," she said, "you may ask me again." Beyond the walls, wolves howled to the rising moon. Not in grief, not in warning, in recognition. Nara Vire had entered the bonding feast as a cursed girl forced to dance for another woman's crown. By dawn, the dead mate had named her murderer, the false bride had fallen, the hidden relics had opened, and the court of Veyrhall had learned the truth it feared most. A curse is often only a witness. No one wanted to believe.